Hey, it's Alicia from mobilitymastery.com, and with this video, I would really like to invite you to try on a theory with me. This video isn't necessarily meant to teach you something I know for sure. It's something I'm trying on in my own life. And with that, let me preface this video with just a little bit of my own experience that has led me to even filming a video like this and inviting you into this theory. As a lot of you know, in 2017, 2018, I got really sick over a period of about 6 months, progressively sicker, and then found out that I was experiencing acute mercury poisoning. And it was really important to me at the time that I find out the source of the poisoning, because in my mind, if I just go immediately into like a detox protocol, but I haven't found the source of the poisoning itself, then I might still be exposing myself on a daily basis to something that is a neurotoxin, and I want to have kids, and it just felt really important to me to identify that source. And I couldn't identify it definitively, but I did rule out food, I ruled out water, I ruled out a genetic history of toxicity to a high degree, maybe not definitively, with a hair test, and it left me with the conclusion that it was coming from air. And my theory at that point was that it was airborne mercury from fracking, because fracking was exploding in the area that I had just moved to, and I got sick immediately after moving into this new house in a new city. And there were dozens and dozens of oil and gas wells surrounding my house within half a mile to a mile. And ultimately sent me on this journey of the last 2 years to looking into detox, and it's why a lot of my videos lately have been on the lymph system and detoxing through fascia release by moving lymph and, yada yada. But something else that I really started to look at through this experience was that my body was trying to alert me to something dangerous in our world, and everywhere I went, in my community, to doctors, talking to friends, the message I received unequivocally, like without exception, was that this was my problem to deal with. Well-meaning friends would say things like, "Good luck, I hope you can detox this out of your body." While listening to my theory that it was fracking, there wasn't really a welcoming, like a receptivity, a welcoming of this message that perhaps something was wrong in the environment and we were all in danger. And the message that I have continued to receive from every single health professional that I have sought help with for detoxing is that I must be genetically defective, that there must be something, in my system, me, that is making it harder for my body to detox than other people, normal people, healthier people. So, for example, when this happened, I was the first one to get tested, so it was just my results. I had 15 micrograms per liter of mercury in my blood, and I wanted Stefan, my fiance, to get tested as well, just to find out, like, hey, is it just me? Because if it was, then I would own that and I would pursue whatever, path was necessary if it was just me. He got tested, and keep in mind, he had no real symptoms, no obvious symptoms. Looking back, I wouldn't say that he had none, but he had no obvious symptoms, whereas mine were really obvious. And he had 16 micrograms per liter of mercury in his blood at the time that we did this testing. And I subsequently ended up asking friends, clients of mine, people in my community to get tested, and ultimately 17 people got tested, and of those, about 10 or 11 had pretty high numbers, like alarmingly high numbers. So there's a little bit of data here to support what I'm talking about. Nevertheless, a lot of the people that did get tested were doing it as a favor to me. So even though they had high levels as well, they maybe chalked it up to eating fish occasionally, which to me seems really unlikely given what I've researched about mercury. So, I continued to kind of receive this message, well, good luck, on your journey. And when I relay this story to every health professional or detox specialist that I see, the answer has consistently been the same across the board, which is, clearly, Alicia, you brought in a heavier, higher toxicity load to that experience of moving to Longmont, whereas Stefan probably didn't, and he's just better at detoxing than you. That's why your body was reactive and his wasn't. And this has never sat well with me. Like I start feeling like a stubborn little kid, or just like, no, like this isn't right. This doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel fair, isn't quite the right word, but right, just doesn't feel right to me. So I've given this a lot of thought in the last 2 years, and I've really come to the conclusion that I refuse to accept that answer from anybody, and I refuse to take it on. So I wrote this quote here because I love it. I feel like it describes me, maybe my whole life, not just the last 2 years, but Krishnamurti said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." And that's what I feel like my body is doing. So I came into moving to Longmont, this new house, with a pact that I had made with my body already prior to this, to always listen to it and to always have those feedback channels open so that it could send me messages about, whether I'm in danger, what foods I should and shouldn't eat, how to nourish myself, how to move my body, which men to date. I mean, I had basically made my body my vehicle for intuition, impulses, and instincts to live my best life. And I also had already done a ton of detoxing. I grew up without a household that had toxicity in it, really, other than maybe we encountered mold, potentially. I don't have that definitively. But my parents were really chemical aware. So I grew up in a really healthy household, no smoking, no, laundry chemicals, no personal care chemicals really in the house. I'm sure I encountered them like everybody because the world is full of chemicals. But I believe that it's actually because of that I am extra sensitive, not, defective to what is wrong in the world. We live in a profoundly sick society right now where, we've introduced 80 to 100,000 new chemicals into our environment in the last 150 years, and very few of them have been rigorously tested for safety, and a lot of them have actually been proven to cause cancer, and yet they're still in our environment. A lot of them have been proven to do worse than cancer, and they're still out there. So I refuse to take this on. However, it's really bothering me that everywhere I go and the people that I'm listening to online or listening to podcasts or watching YouTube channels, like people I respect, it is common. It is a common narrative in the holistic health field right now that if you are having a hard time detoxing, you must be, maybe you have a methylation issue, maybe it's your genetics, maybe it's your parental history. And that, I'm not saying that that's not part of it. I think it is a part of it. However, I believe this has to do with nature's brilliance and nature's checks and balances. So this is one of my last bullet points here, but I'll start with it because I believe that nature is always trying to usher us towards truth, towards love, towards balance, towards vitality. And what we do with those kind of nudges and pushes, right, is an individual matter. But I believe that nature is brilliant. So if nature is brilliant and you are born with something like a methylation issue, right, the MTHFR thing, there's a lot of talk about that in the natural and holistic health worlds, right? I am proposing, this is my theory, I am proposing that this is not your problem, that you are actually a messenger from nature, that humanity is fucking up right now, that we are in a world of shit. We have introduced so many chemicals. We are profoundly sick. There is so much disease and illness and, sickness in our society, not just at the physical level, but the emotional and psychological as well. Depression and suicide have skyrocketed, that nature's trying to get our attention. Nature is brilliant. So what if we didn't actually look at our differences, right? Like The SNPs is another thing that I don't know very much about, but I hear people talking a lot about. So I wanted to mention that too, because these are the things that you can test genetically, right? To find out your maybe, unique blueprint for how you deal with toxicity, and maybe, your genes are slightly different, right? The SNPs thing is single nucleotide polymorphism. And I believe what that means, though don't quote me on this. I would do your own research because this is not an area of expertise of mine. But what I hear people kind of doing with this knowledge is, whether it's doctors and some doctors and holistic or functional medicine doctors, and the like, scientists and researchers is saying like, hey, we figured out like your defect, and maybe you can take X, Y, and Z pills or supplements, right, to create, to fix the problem, essentially. And what I'm actually proposing is that if we continue to do that, it's like plugging every hole in the Titanic, that's a tiny little, like they're just going to keep popping up. And we're like, focusing on these tiny little holes that are, there's a leak in our boat, but we're focused on the tiny little ones as opposed to like the iceberg or whatever. It's probably a bad metaphor. But we're super focused on the individual instead of the message coming through nature, coming through the world, coming through you from the world, right? So my whole thing with this video is your body is a reflection of the world. And if that's true, what is the world trying to tell us, right? What is the world trying to tell you? What does the world want you to tell all of humanity based on your experience? For me, just to go back to my story, I feel like the message coming through me is to beat this drum and stand in what feels like this truth to me, no matter what comes at me, that I'm sorry, I refuse to take on being considered the defective one. I think the world out there is currently defective, and that's the message I'm allowing to come through me. I also want to mention the gut-brain barrier here, because this is something people talk a lot about, but not necessarily in this context. So that gut-brain barrier, right, is basically the entry point of our immune system, or, where it can get compromised. It's half a hair's width thick. It is one cell thick. It's extremely thin. And why would nature design us this way? Well, if you believe that nature is brilliant, she will not let us destroy everything. Like, we're going to destroy ourselves if we don't, do something about this. For sure. We're already doing it. We're profoundly sick, right? There's you and the environment. And then I want to talk about evolution, and what we can do about this, because I don't just want this to be like a sad, frustrating, non-actionable video. So gut-brain barrier. If you have gut issues, if you have emotional, issues related to the gut-brain barrier, right? Serotonin production in the gut. And I think all of us do to an extent, to be honest, but maybe not everybody. But that is something to consider, right? Is like, what are you putting in your body? How is that getting your attention through your body as a message about the state of the world? I would like you to consider that theory with me. That maybe focusing on your gut isn't actually the best course of action. That focusing on yourself as A, the defective one, and B, the sole responsible one to make you better, is isolating yourself from the world. And we can try to do that, but ultimately we'll fail because it's impossible, right? We can't separate ourselves from the world. And then there's you and your environment. And what I mean by that is everything in it, right? The people in your life, the chemicals in your household, or your exposure to toxicity, not just in your household, but maybe like me, living near fracking or living near some other, like a golf course, or I don't know if it's maybe EMF, 5G is rolling out soon, right? But like, our environment has a profound effect on us. And the more we ignore that, it's to our detriment. And then this, I guess, should have been last. Maybe this was first, should have been first. But the point of all this, for me, the good news, the silver lining in all this, and the way forward. In my opinion, this is my theory. So I'm inviting you to try it on with me and then share what you think below this video, is to evolve ourselves as individuals and humanity as a whole, and to evolve human consciousness. If we selfishly focus only on ourselves, and if we allow ourselves to take on the message that the world is telling us, that we are in fact the problem, we're defective, it is actually our genetics, it is, you know, something wrong with us that needs fixing in here and it's not out there. If we only focus on ourselves, we don't get to evolve. And then nature, with her checks and balances, will have to go to someone else and try to have the message come through someone else, since you are not opening yourself as a feedback channel between humanity and this world we live in. And then on a personal note, I would say, I don't believe that each of us is supposed to take on every problem out there in the world. That would be really overwhelming, totally depressing, probably feel defeating on a daily basis, and we'd be likely to give up. So my message to you, the theory that I would like you to try on if you want to, is that whatever is happening in your life is your curriculum. Whatever is happening in your body is the message that wants to come through you to your community, to your, whether that's, you know, an intimate family community or, you know, your whole community, and maybe to the world. Depends, right? I'm public here on YouTube and Mobility Mastery. I have made, you know, like when I was little, I felt like I had a really big mission in the world. Like I felt like I was here to do something big and like help the world in some profound way. Sometimes I'm like, really? Why'd I have to think that? And, you know, why'd I have to actually like self-elect for that to be true? Because it's overwhelming sometimes. I feel like through me, I have a big message. So I have a lot to carry. I have a lot, you know, that I feel wants to come through me. For example, with the mercury poisoning, it just didn't feel right to me to take on that label of like, I'm the defective one, and so I've got to fix my genetics and, you know, take certain supplements to open my pathways and all that. And then to isolate myself as the problem, that just didn't feel right to me. So I would encourage you to look at the word and meaning for you of integrity. Whatever integrity means to you is your path, is your work, is your personal evolutionary trajectory. I don't believe that everybody has to do what I'm doing, for example. I don't believe that everybody who has mercury poisoning, for example, is supposed to, you know, get on a podium with a loudspeaker and talk about toxicity to the world. However, if that person, maybe it's you, if you feel like that's actually what you're supposed to do, to be in integrity with your purpose this lifetime and to be in integrity with what you know you're supposed to do with your life, then your body will compel you to do that one way or another, right? Like, so I believe that the path forward is really more about integrity and standing in the truth of what feels right to you, rather than about the supplements you take and the pathways and all that, though that's part of it, perhaps, you know, for you. For example, with me, I definitely was trying physical things and in terms of like my body and me, and I sat with the question, like, is it me? Like, is it my genetic history? Is it my mom's toxic load? Is it, you know, and the more I sought help from other people, the more that kept coming at me, and the more it didn't feel right, until I finally decided, no, like, I actually believe the path forward for me is to alchemize the neurotoxicity that happened in my body by standing in my truth, by speaking up, by facing my karma, by doing what life seems to be nudging and pushing me to do, because that's what's supposed to happen for me. And so whatever this is for you is already happening in your life. Life is nudging you and pushing you and kind of getting your attention through your body in a number of ways. And not just your body, but that is the purpose of this video. Your body is a reflection of the world. So I ask you right now, what message wants to come through you and your body, come through your body to your consciousness that you're maybe supposed to tell your family, if nothing else, or your community, or perhaps the world? And how does it feel to try that on? Like, how does it feel to try on the fact that maybe there is no genetic defect? Like, maybe these SNPs and these other things that are happening is actually nature's brilliance, and you're not supposed to fix it. Because if we fix it, it's gonna have, like, nature's gonna have to get our attention in some other way that's likely gonna be catastrophic, right? So what if we actually turned towards what's happening in us and honored what's happening there that nature is doing? Because nature, I don't know about you, but I think like nature is highly spiritual. Nature is God talking to us, however you want to look at it. There's brilliance in nature that if we try to mess with is to our detriment. So I'll say again, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And if you were to take that on in your life right now, what would it look like? I would love to hear your thoughts below this video. This is something I feel really passionate about and will be talking about more and more because I don't see anyone else talking about it. And so if you can, if you're on board with this, if it feels right to you, then please share this video or please share this idea with the people in your life. And then please share your thoughts below because I would love to not feel so alone in it, though I'm okay being alone, but I don't want to be. I want to create a community of people who are willing to actually look at this and, you know, share the messages coming through your body about the state of the world. Like, how are we doing out there in the world? I don't know. I don't think we're doing so good right now. So we can change it though. We can change it. I always have that hope in me. So please share your thoughts below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.